In another episode of games I have no business owning, we have the 1970 Williams Bonanza Rifle gun game. Now, I acquired this game a long time ago. I have to admit, I've probably had it 20 years. If we look back here, you can see that there's two sets of horses. The far horse, which moves really fast, and then the larger horse that's more in the foreground that moves kind of medium fast. And then you'll have some static targets that pop up, and then the mine shaft and some other targets up front which do not move. This game used a 4-track sound system, which I can guarantee you in every one of these Bonanzas is gone. And in fact, it would have been right down here, and I've replaced it with an MP3 player, which we will talk about in a second. And then back to the architecture, we've got some relays here. They go through a diode, and then they have some caps on them to hold them in. And the reason why they do these 2 delay relays like this is for the 3 sounds in this game. So the game had a background sound that went through the Munvies 4-track player, and the 4-track player also had an amplifier in it. And then you'd have a relay here which pulled in and hits this spring, and up here there is like a cartridge unit, like almost a phonograph cartridge unit, that would amplify that to give a kind of a gunshot or an explosion sound. And then they would use these relays over here to turn those sounds on. This one has a smaller 470 microfarad cap on it, and this one has 1,000. So this one pulls in longer. It's known as the 2-second delay, and then this one's like a 1-second delay. I should point out that that reverb spring, it's the same sound for the gunshot as it is for the mine explosion. The only difference is the length of time. So the gunshot is just a really short time burst using the short delay relay, and the mine is that spring vibrating longer to give a more explosion sound, but in reality, it's the exact same sound, just played a different length of time. Originally, those weren't the caps that were on there. As part of this repair process, I had to replace them. This was the original short delay, and you can see where the caps, they've both leaked really badly. So I replaced them both with these newer variants, and I increased the capacitance of this from 250 microfarad to 470, and this one I decreased from 1,500 down to 1,000 microfarad. It originally was a piece of wood here with the original 4-track recorder, which again, long gone. And what I've done is I added a bridge rectifier and a fuse, and then the output of the bridge goes over to this little guy, which is a Electronics 123 MP3 player. Now this particular one, I have added a little digital display to show me what power is the input on here. That's just for my own shits and giggles. But the reason why I use this is that I can run the background sound that we have captured, and then I can also have a rifle sound and a mine explosion sound. So this can handle all the sounds. And in order to do that, in order to get those sounds, I did have to add some switches to those delay relays we were talking about before. So this topmost switch here, I added. You can see the plastic wire. And down here, this foreground switch right here, and again, plastic wire, I have added to those relays so that I can trigger my MP3 player down here. Before the MP3 player thing came around, like I said, I had this game 20 years ago. I implemented this to replace the Mun's 4-track tape player. And this is just a Sony cassette deck that I can leave on play, and it has an endless loop cassette in there, and it would play the background sound of the game. So when the game started, it ran, this tape player runs off 6 volts, which is convenient because we're using the general illumination voltage that I converted from AC to DC to run this guy. And this worked actually pretty well. But with the advent of MP3 players, I could not only get a system where there's no physical tape to wear out, but I can also get a mine explosion sound and the trigger sound. So now what I'll do is I'll hit the lock relay, and this will basically start the game that I already had in progress, opposed to doing a full system reset. And it'll turn on our MP3 player with our background sound playing. You can see, there's my voltage check. And you can hear the sound playing on the MP3 player. And there's a speaker in here. Here's the front panel of the game removed, and you can see this is where the speakers were. The only volume control that still works is this one, because this one's for, I believe, the rifle sound, and this one's for the mine explosion, which aren't there. Well, they are. They're on the MP3 player, but the MP3 player has its own volume control, so you just leave this guy up all the way. I added a second bell. This bell here was original to the game. I added this bell also. And the reason I also wired the speakers together in parallel. So we have 2 speakers instead of just one for the background sound, and actually all the sounds. And the reason why I added that second bell is the one bell just wasn't enough for my liking. I wanted the game to be a little noisier. So back here, you can see these blue wires. I wired the bell, the secondary bell, into both the 10-point and 100-point relays. So when those go off, it rings my other bell. And then the stock bell gets rung. Oh, I forget what rings that. The soundtrack I'm using, I just took the original soundtrack, which has horses galloping, and added the Bonanza theme to the background to it and overlapped the two. Did I need to add the Bonanza theme? Probably not, but I don't know, it makes it a little more interesting. But let me show you these two guys and how they interact with the sound. So again, I'm going to hit the lock relay to get the game going again. Okay. And then if I hit the mine shaft explosion, you'll watch the delay relay pull in. See how he's staying there? And then he releases and you can hear the explosion. Listen. Okay. And then for the trigger is the gunshot sound, and you'll see this relay pull in with the trigger. Now I'm going to turn this bloody thing off because it's noisy as hell. But anyways, that's how these two relays, and why I added the switches to get the MP3 player going for those sounds. I'm up at the computer, and my pin repair website, pinrepair.com/arcade/Bonanza HDM, has additional information on wiring up these little MP3 boards to work in the game. And I even have the sound files that you can download. So here's a link to the exact soundboard that we're using in the game. And I also have the sound file. Here's the deck up on the Bonanza. I should mention that there is a recoil. You can see it right there. So that big coil is, I think it's like a 110 volt coil. This guy pulls in, and then there's a rubber coating around the gun shaft that gives you the recoil. Some of the Williams games don't have these, and I've been able to add them back in. It's not really difficult. You need a couple brackets and some metal. And then the inside, you can see the game actually has a knocker too, because and there's our red explosion light for the mine. In addition, here is your stylus, which is connected to the gun. As the gun moves, see the stylus moves and lines up with these rivets. That's how the thing can tell how you're scoring. It's not really that complicated, but when you think about it, it kind of is. Now, this is not a time game. This is a shot game, which means when you got all the time in the world when you start it. So I'm going to start a game up. We'll watch the score reels reset. I took the front glass out so we don't get the glare on the camera. So here we go. Start a game. Getting that slow horse, man, he's hard to get. And the fast horse in the back, forget it. It's not even worth aiming for. Oh, there's the mine. Okay, let's hit the mine. See, the red light goes off and I get the explosion sound. And there we are, 25 shots. You can see it up here. 25 shots, game over. But I should also mention that Williams must have thought this was a pretty nice gun game because, and it must have sold well because the following year, in 1971, they came out with another game called Sniper, which was almost exactly the same bloody gun game, just with an army theme. So instead of horses running back and forth, you have tanks. And instead of cowboys popping up down here, you have soldiers. But it is nearly the same video or same game. And I'll probably do a video on that one. But there you have it, the 1970 Williams Bonanza gun game.